Good morning, AGS crew, and welcome to this week's video. We're going to dive right in today. I have a slightly different order I'm trying out, so let's get to it. We'll start with the payout updates. Steve was the top scorer for week 4 with a whopping 200.14 points, just the second team to break 200 this season, and falls short of Josh's record by less than half a point. Nice job, Steve. Quick shout out to Todd, who won last week's top scorer prize with 177 points. Scott now holds the title for the Close But No Cigar prize after losing in week 3 by 0.2 points. 0.2. That's going to be a tough record to break, so Scott might actually walk away with some cash this year. Steve has jumped ahead on the top rookie prize almost out of nowhere. Dameon Pierce with 2 monster weeks for a rookie and is now at the top of the list, helped by Drake London a little bit, who had a few unimpressive games. The Waiver Wire Wizard has also seen quite a bit of movement in week 4. Matt making a bold decision to sit Jacoby Brissett in week 4. Looks like he's going to sit him in week 5 as well. Cooper Rush and Gerard Everett both making big leaps towards number 1. Because of that, Suckup is also still in the running, and I wouldn't count out someone like Josh Reynolds either. A great pickup by Nick last week. Nice job there. Alrighty, let's jump into the recaps. First up is Matt versus Jason. Matt takes the win here by a landslide, sending Jason to 3-5 and bringing his own record back to even at 4-4. Another terrible week from Jonathan Taylor and left over 20 points on the bench with CEH. Matt made a good call by setting Brissett to maximize his QB scoring, but he would have beaten Jason either way and hurt his chances at that $100 prize for the waiver wire pickups. Very respectable score overall after a disappointing couple of weeks, so it's nice to see you bounce back, Matt. Nice job in week 4. Jason has struggled a ton at QB the past couple of weeks, really doesn't have any other options on his roster either, and just not what you'd expect out of the Rams offense, in particular with Matt Stafford. He continues to play and be disappointed by Allen Robinson, who's always a hit-or-miss player. Jefferson put up 33 points, which was great to see after a very disappointing couple of weeks. Nick Chubb with 25 as well, but all that is not enough. Jason, you lose this one to Matt. And you lost your matchup against the median. You're at 3-5 now, but somehow you're still leading your division. We'll talk more about that in a bit. Steve versus Josh in an absolute shootout. 392 points total in this matchup. I think that's a season high. Josh with a devastating loss, being the second highest scorer of the week. That's the reason why we have the median matchups, but I know it still hurts. Jared Goff with a huge week for Steve. Rashad Penny also surprising us with 35 points. Dameon Pierce comes out of nowhere with 28. You'd hope for more points out of Diggs and Derek Carr, but it's hard to complain when you're scoring 200 plus. For Josh, Kittle just hasn't lived up to expectations coming back from his injury. Geno Smith has been a huge surprise, and although he isn't completely consistent, he's been a real breakout star this season, so that's a great pickup from the draft. Sanders, Barkley, and Debo all pulling through for you this week. When your team fires on all cylinders like this, you're practically unstoppable. Unfortunately, you were matched up against the one team who could stop you this week, and you took the L. Nick versus Scott. Scott finally having a chance to get in the win column, but still falls short in your matchup. You did beat the median, which is great, so you moved on to 1-7 on the season, and Nick moves to 6-2. Nick had great weeks from Josh Allen, as usual, Russell Wilson, McCaffrey, Tyreek Hill. You picked up Josh Reynolds from waivers, and you had a fantastic week out of him. That was an awesome pickup, and it puts you on the map for that $100 waiver wire prize. He didn't leave much on the bench. You had great roster management this week. Scott continues to leave huge points on the bench and just struggle to pick the right starters. It's really tough when you have so many running back 2 and wide receiver 2 options on your team, so it's just hard to make those calls. You came close again to another win 2 weeks in a row, but you can't quite pull it off. Interestingly, you've scored more points each and every week, so you've continued to improve, and I think you could be on track to start winning a few games here soon. You finally beat the league median, though, and you got your first win, so you're at 1-7. Jeff against Todd in the lowest scoring matchup of the week. Jeff takes the win despite leaving 70 points on your bench. Todd also left over 40 points on his bench and easily could have won with a better starting lineup. Both teams moved to 2-6. Very, very, very rough start to the season here. Jeff continues to sit Josh Jacobs. Probably not going to make that mistake in week 5. Lazard also had a great game for Jeff after you benched him. Just not the production you'd expect out of your starters, Dylan and Jones, that combo. I feel for you again this week, Jeff. You have a really good team, a lot of good players who are just not living up to expectations. You have to hope it's a fluke and that they'll bounce back. Luckily, you did have Eckler, who had a great week for you and led the way to the win. Todd continues to be on the struggle bus. He had a fantastic week 3, was our top scorer, while the rest of us struggled that week. But in week 4, you're right back to your old ways, only putting up 120 points. You had a lot of potential on your bench. Hindsight being 2020, maybe you should have started Daniel Jones, but the rest of your roster management made sense. Just not enough points out of your top guys to bring home a win. Taro versus Brad, with Taro getting the win this week. Brad had the worst game of the year so far, despite a good game from Kelsey, who hasn't been as consistent as you'd like this year. Lamar Jackson put up just a normal amount of points. The Bills were somehow able to shut him down, but I expect he'll bounce back in week 5. Rodgers also had a pretty unimpressive day against the Pats, throwing his second pick 6 ever at Lambeau. That was crazy. I was there in person. It was awesome to see. I've said it all along. I think your team is great, and I bet 125 points this week. That's going to be your season low. Taro had a fantastic game from Herbert, Kyler Murray, who you'd expect, Higgins and Metcalf, who you might not expect. Waddle also had a very quiet day, dragged you down a bit, but you still got the win here. I'm honestly shocked that you're at 6-2 on the year, given the running back situation that you're in. It's very impressive what you've scraped together. A lot of good roster management, a lot of waiver wire moves, and somehow you're holding it together at 6-2. Last but not least, myself versus Dalton. This is my first loss to the median of the year, but was still enough to take down Dalton, who moves to 3-5. I had a huge week from Henry, and I'm starting to breathe a sigh of relief with him. I was very nervous he wasn't going to be putting up a lot of points after the first few weeks. Mixon, still not what I expected out of it when I drafted him, but I will take the 17 points. It's not too bad. Tua, obviously, with the big injury this week, it's all that any of the NFL broadcasts will talk about. I'm a little stuck now with 2 mediocre QB options on my bench. I'm hoping that when he does finally come back, that it's the same Tua that we saw in the first few weeks, but we'll have to see. Dalton with a disappointing week from Drake London, who dropped 5 out of 7 passes and is no longer in the lead for the $100 top rookie prize. Olav had a nice week. Cooper Rush did decent in their game against Washington. Not a whole lot of points left on your bench, and overall you have an uphill battle here with the rest of the season with all the injuries that you're dealing with. I don't think that you're out of it yet, though, with Jones and Prescott likely to come back in a few weeks. Your team could be a sleeper here and make a late run for the playoffs. So how are we looking 4 weeks in? Division leaders are Taro, Steve, Jason, and myself. Jason has no business being the number 4 seed with a losing record and the second fewest points scored on the season. Somehow he is leading the old school division, but it's been an easy road for him, honestly. Nick and Brad currently hold the wild card spots but with 9 weeks remaining, 18 matchups, it's still anybody's game. Even Scott at 1-7 still has a real shot at coming back. He's consistently scored more points week after week compared to the last, and just has struggled a little bit with bad luck in weeks 3 and 4. We have 4 teams sitting at 6-2 right now. Josh is our leading scorer on the season, but has struggled with consistency, so he's sitting at number 7 right now with a 4-4 record. No team has beaten the league median every single week, and no team has lost to the league median every single week. We have 5 teams who are at 3-1 against the median, and 5 teams who are 1-3 against the median. It's just an incredibly even matched league so far. Very happy to see that. And a quick update on my predictions versus Sleeper. I am 9-9 on the season, behind Sleeper by 2 games, hoping to make that up in week 5. Now, it's just 4 weeks in, and it's a little bit early to start talking about the playoff picture, but this is something that I like to put together for all of my leagues. I'll probably post a separate video in a couple of weeks explaining how it works in more detail. I'm using Excel to simulate scores for the rest of the season based on how each team has scored in the first 4 weeks. I calculate the standings based on that simulation, and then I use a macro to run the simulation 10,000 times. So what we're looking at here is how often each team finishes at a given standing from those 10,000 simulations. Given that we're only 4 weeks in and we haven't had to deal with any bye weeks or anything like that, I don't think this is the most accurate prediction, but it'll be interesting to see how the odds change throughout the season from this starting point. All right, the Week 5 preview. I'm going to go with a faster version of the previews this week. So here's the rundown. Mike versus Jason. Jason continues to be let down by Stafford, Mayfield, and Jefferson. Chubb is going to have a big day, but not big enough. I'm going to have great weeks out of Kupp and Henry. I think Mixon finally has a big week. It's bound to happen at some point. And I'm gonna win this one 160 to 135, moving 8-2 on the season, and forcing Jason down to 3-7. Todd versus Steve. Steve already with a good week out of Melvin Gordon. Carr and Adams do well against a struggling Kansas City. Stephon Diggs bounces back in a blowout against the Steelers. Todd has another week with only 120 points, with disappointing performances across the board. Daniel Jones won't do well against Green Bay, but after a great week 3, I don't blame you for starting him. Steve is going to take this one in a blowout against Todd, also moving to 8-2, and Todd moves to 2-8. Matt versus Scott. Scott continues to improve every week, and I think he'll do it again in week 5. Evans and Brady are going to have big days against the Falcons. Matt put CEH back in his lineup, and I think this one will come down to that Monday night game. Scott, though, is finally going to get his first matchup win and also beat the league median again. He's going to go to 3-7, while Matt moves to 5-5. Nick versus Dalton. Nick has big days as usual from Josh Allen and Tyreek Hill, who are going to go for 70+ combined. He gets an average performance from the rest of his lineup, though. Dalton is going to see Drake London bounce back, but continues to struggle with all the injuries on his team right now. This one goes to Nick, who moves to 8-2, and Dalton is going to fall to 3-7. Jeff versus Taro. Jeff continues to struggle this year. I think he cursed himself with that team name and stealing Aaron Jones at the draft. Eckler continues to carry his team, scoring 25+, but it is not going to be enough. Taro gets a great game out of Herbert. Waddle bounces back. Murray has a career day against the Eagles. Taro's going to take this one easily, but I think he's going to fall short of the median. Taro's going to go to 7-3, with Jeff falling to 2-8. Brad versus Josh. Two really good but inconsistent teams. Brad's going to bounce back and has his best week of the year so far. Lamar Jackson, Jamar Chase, Kelsey all with big weeks. Kamara's coming back into the lineup and has a great day as well in a shootout versus Seattle. Josh, a team with so much potential when things go right. Geno Smith is going to have another nice week for you, but I don't see you living up to your projections this week. I'm going to give this one to Brad, with Josh barely beating the median in a Monday night nail-biter. Brad is going to move to 7-3, while Josh stays even at 5-5, just shy of a playoff spot. Overall, I think we're going to see a lot more separation in the standings after this week, solidifying the playoff chances for a few of the top teams and making it more of an uphill battle for those near the bottom. All right, good luck to everybody except for Jason this week, and go Pats.